Hey everybody, this is Combative Nerds. Thank you for joining us for the B-side. This time we're going to talk about Rogue One. This is Raiderlance and
Fighter2Wizard5.
So we went off about nerd culture, and now we're going to engage in it. So the hypocrisy is real thick here. We wanted to talk about the movie, Star Wars movie, Rogue One, because the Disney Plus, I think it's Andor show is coming up.
Andor.
Later this month, and I'm assuming...
It's out now?
It's out now. Okay, so I'm assuming we're going to start reviewing that bad boy.
We certainly can.
Okay. Well, I will turn it over to our expert on Star Wars. What did you think about Rogue One?
That's an excellent question. I still bristle with the term expert. I would prefer enthusiast, but we will go with whatever.
Star Wars nerd? Would that be fine?
Sure, that's acceptable.
Okay.
So Rogue One for me, and I have several friends that agree with this. Not for me, but some of them say it's an excellent movie, standalone, and it's one of the, if not the best, Star Wars movie. That can be argued with Empire Strikes Back because that's a hot take.
Ooh, yeah.
I will say that there's a lot I like about Rogue One. There's very little I don't like, but what I think I like most, other than like the real fan service payoff moments and fun. Yeah, I'll stick with the term fan service moments. Is for me, Rogue One is probably the only Star Wars movie that is standalone and enjoyable as a movie in absentia knowledge of Star Wars. If you don't know who Darth Vader is when you watch Rogue One, it doesn't matter. Because he's presented immediately as this malevolent force.
Good point.
Who scares people. And then at the end, you see why he scares people. And you're intrigued to know more. If you don't know who Princess Leia is at the very end, there's maybe not that emotional punch of...
Great point.
Seeing CGI Carrie Fisher say, hope. But
sure.
You're immediately intrigued of, oh, well, who the hell is she? Where are they going? What are they doing? What happens next? Not knowing that, 15 minutes later, she's captured. And the characters are interesting enough to get you through the end of the story, but not so deep and it's good that you don't want to know more because all of them die.
Sure.
But it's just, I don't know. It's a really good it's a perfect encapsulation of a war serial movie, which is exactly what the director had in mind when he was creating it, which is he wants to make it a war serial movie first and have it be couched in the Star Wars universe, which to me it very much was and is made all the better for it.
Please define war serial movie.
A movie about war.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
In the old format of, here's our boys taking the beach. Watch out, Hitler. You're going to get punched hard.
Yes.
That sort of thing. And it very much does have those episodic quick bits.
When watching it, just to insert one of my thoughts while watching the movie, I was taken aback where the rebels are pitching the plan to go invade the base, to go get the plans, and they get rejected by all the leaders because the leaders can't agree. And then, was he Captain Andor? And then am I pronouncing it wrong? Andor. Captain Andor? Cassian Andor. Where he walks up with all of his buddies. And they basically say they want to be a special ops. And then they give the little speech in the aircraft when it's landing. Between the outfits, the look in those men's eyes, and the type of speech they gave, I got a D-Day storming the beach.
That's a good point.
Right? I felt like I was watching a World War II movie as opposed to a Star Wars movie. Yeah. And it really stood out to me. So when you say a serial war movie, I'm like, yeah, I could kind of see that speech when Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan. You know what I mean? Where it's just getting the... Oh, you disagreed with that one.
No, it's not that. It's to that degree.
Talking,
yeah, I agree.
Yes.
But no, it's the Normandy scene, the Omaha Beach. It's They're going into a place where most of them are going to die. And we're going to just scale it back from comparing it to the actual storming of Normandy on June 6th, 1944.
I said the scene.
I'm just laying it out. No, I'm just laying it out. It just feels a little like it doesn't have that gravity. Please still give us 5 stars. But I absolutely
agree with you.
So, first point, I mean, I think we both made it just a little bit. What did you like about this film?
You know me, I got shit on it. I liked it.
There yet. We're not there yet. What did
We're not
you
there
like
yet?
about this film?
But okay. So what so what did I like? So when I watched Rogue One when it came out, the prequels had already come out, but 7, 8, and 9 had not come out.
True.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I grew up on episode 4, 5, 6. Return of the Jedi was my favorite. Prequels broke my heart, and I wrote off Star Wars after that. Rogue One was a breath of fresh air and kind of put me back on life. It hooked up life support for Star Wars to me because it was more of a vintage Star Wars feel and look. Sure, they modified certain things. Sure, they upped the technology. But I finally could relate to a Star Wars movie again. So that's my gut feeling about it. Now, it expanded the universe. I didn't know the universe as well. I was more comfortable with the characters I knew because I didn't have the wealth and depth of knowledge that you do about the Star Wars universe. So I was a little, whether you call it disengaged or not as emotionally invested in the storyline, I still appreciated that it was in a timeline I understood, with ships I could recognize, it had tons of CGI, but not to the level of the prequels. So I really, really enjoyed it. And I found that I actually liked that it wasn't very Jedi heavy because the prequels were Jedi heavy.
Yeah.
So we're getting back to more of the, 4, 5, and 6 where there's, here we got a Force sensitive guy. That's about it. So I really liked Rogue One, and it made me willing to check out episodes 7 and 8, but never 9.
Strong condemnation of 9. After watching a few analyses...
No, of 8. 8. I hated 8 so bad, I did not want to watch 9.
8 and 9 are both poorly executed films. And there's a lot with both of them. As much as I love Star Wars, the more I consider and analyze 7, 8, and 9, the more disappointed I am. Once I get over the initial high, and there's a name of the effect, but I can't remember what it is. Once I get over the initial high of getting to experience Star Wars in the theater and enjoying the story, it's just, yeah. It just dissipates, and I was like, yeah, that was a bad film and a bad story. You can accuse Lucas of perhaps making a bad film, but the story is pretty good and the beats hit. He may not have chosen a good actor with Jake Lloyd, but the story arc is still good. With 7, 8, and 9, we're not here to litigate on 7, 8, 9.
Yeah. Let's get back to Rogue One.
Yeah, so with Rogue One, so it's interesting you said that I was able to connect with it more. What did you connect with more in Rogue One? Because a lot of things that younger people, in our case, when we were boys, like about 4, 5, and 6, especially 4, is that it is based on Jungian archetypes. The hero, the unknown hero who becomes the hero, the wise old man, the rogue, the princess, etc. So it's easy to identify with that, that archetype that pervades culture. What did you identify with in Rogue One? What was that hook for you?
The hook was a rebel base. I felt like it was in Star Wars, where they meet together. There's, for lack of better terms, a council of warlords or captains, right? It's not this one person's in charge, kind of like it is with the Emperor. Or the military structure, I should say. It's kind of a loose band of rebels, right?
Very much so.
And so they all get together. They're all voting. They're all arguing. They're rallying to a cause. It felt the same as what happened in Star Wars. Kind of what happened in Return of the Jedi, but that was more on the ship, and it was already, the Rebel Alliance, it was already set in stone. Now we're just the people there. I also liked, Fishface, Calamari, what was that guy called? Admiral
Raddus. He's a Mon Calamari.
Thank you. Yes. So it is Calamari. Yeah, okay, so I wasn't trying to be funny. I thought it was, I thought
they're called the Mon Calamari from the planet Calamari.
I love how he led the ships, or all the vessels. They jumped out of hyperspace. They did the attack kind of like they did on the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi. There was, I don't think it was callbacks, but it felt familiar, right? Yeah. And so, whereas, with the prequels, it was the Jedi Council, and you got Jedi fighting with stormtroopers that aren't stormtroopers yet because it's the clone army, and it's just all this mass chaos. I just looked like I was watching a big Lord of the Rings battle where people are just all going at it, and it just felt disconnected. Here is more personalized stories when the battle actually took place.
Sure. And I think the strength of the movie, in one sense, is that the stories are personalized, and it's executed well with really scant dialogue, because if you have 6 people that you need to get to know over 2 hours, not everyone gets their chance to shine. Jyn Erso, you know 2 things about her, and that's sufficient to go from A to B and to enjoy her character arc.
Sure.
Same with Cassian Andor, same with Baze, same with Chirrut Imwe, and so forth. And you don't need the connection. So you liked the connection that it has to A New Hope and the ragtag band of rebels, and sort of recreating that environment, which I like as well. But you don't need it to enjoy the film. Whereas with the prequels, I think you have already needed to enjoy Star Wars to enjoy what's going on. You need to know about Jedi a little bit to appreciate what a Jedi Council is. You need to know about the Sith a little bit to appreciate who Darth Maul is. It helps if you know you have to know who Darth Vader already is to appreciate how he became that man.
Right.
And so forth. With Rogue One, doesn't matter if you know who the fuck Darth Vader is. He's barely.
That's a really good point.
It doesn't matter if you even know what a Jedi is, because it's barely spoken about in like three lines of dialogue. And even then it's this mysterious hidden thing that people have to keep under wraps. So it's intriguing. It draws out, or it invites the viewer to learn more without demanding it or worse, requiring it.
That's a really good point.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I don't have much to add on that.
Yeah, let's get, so your favorite part. Let's go with what you didn't like. You know what? I will say this. There are a lot of things I like about the film. I think that's pretty obvious. The part I like the most is the part that everybody likes the most, is the hallway scene with Darth Vader. And the reason, so the movies that I really enjoy, not all of them, but 2 of them I have, 3 of them. There are 3 movies that I remember being in the theater with my family and having that boyish sort of like excitement in, like you can just feel it, it's going to happen, and it's super enjoyable. The first was the first Avengers, but Marvel's Avengers, when the Chitauri, I don't know what the name of it is. It's a giant worm that floats through the air. It's gigantic. And the Hulk comes up, and Captain America says, like, Dr. Banner, now it's time for you to, now would be a really good time for you to get angry. And like the music is building, and he just turns into the Hulk and shatters the thing. You're like, fuck yeah, the whole theater cheers. It's the first time, it was the premiere night of it. It was great. It was in the middle of LA. The guy who plays Phil Coulson was there. He introduced the movie. Anyway, it's fucking great. But like everybody's awesome together, and they're all enjoying that. And the same thing happened with Infinity War, when there's like everybody comes back to, like, the whole theater's like, oh. And the same thing happened with Rogue One, when it's like, man, Darth Vader was only in it for like 2 seconds. What a waste of a character. And then you see his shuttle flanked by 2 TIE fighters go towards and I can't remember the name of the ship, but it's Radiss's ship that's been deactivated by ion cannons.
How did he get away?
Radis?
Yeah.
He didn't.
Oh, he didn't. So it was a different calamari in Return of the Jedi. Okay. My apologies.
That's Admiral Akbar. It's a trap.
Yes, you are correct. Yes.
I know.
Don't make me tap you.
There are very few instances in my life where, like, yeah, I know.
That's fucking awesome.
But there's still that moment where, like, he comes up and, like, you could see the rebels like, hey, come on, we're locked in. And there's just, you hear the steps, and then you hear the breathing, and everybody in the theater. And I still remember being like, oh, it's gonna happen. And then it happens, and it's so much better than I thought it would be, where he's just fucking carving dudes left and right. You're like, this is who Darth Vader's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, he lifts up a dude, suspends him against the ceiling, and then, like, casually slices through his midsection while walking forward and ripping guns out of people's hands. It's just fucking great.
So, I'm going to disagree.
You shut the fuck up now. Okay, we will move on to the second anchor. What is it that you disliked?
This is unfair and unjust. Everything you said when I saw Rogue One, yes. But now after reviewing Rogue One for a second time, after having seen the Kenobi series, a little let down. It was good, but Darth Vader and Kenobi was so much better. It ruined the Rogue One scene for me. He could have been worse.
He murders at least 10 people on screen within the span of about 35 to 40 seconds. He just walks through them. He does not change his pace as he goes through them until he gets to a closed door that he then has to cut through.
I'm not saying it wasn't good. I'm just saying Kenobi Darth Vader was better than Rogue One Darth Vader.
Why?
That's it.
Do you mean he wasn't evil enough? He didn't kill. No, this is a genuine question. I'm not challenging it.
Yes. The fight scene between him and Reva versus what he did to those guys.
Okay, that's fair. That was pretty fucking badass.
Right? So
that's good.
The walk through the village could be comparable to him in Rogue One. You know, the Vader stroll where he's killing kids and parents and
just murdering innocent villagers.
Sure. That's comparable. Not the Reva fight scene. Not the Kenobi fight scene.
The Kenobi fight scene was good on multiple levels, but also just the sheer emotional punch.
Yeah.
The Reva fight scene was just great because, he's just going to fucking take you apart. He's not even going to use a lightsaber to fucking take you apart.
I'm surprised he didn't put his hands behind his back. The old Conor McGregor against Eddie Alvarez. But yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's just a little bit less than last time. Which I was bummed about. So
there is some criticism that's levied against both a CGI Tarkin and CGI Carrie Fisher.
I would agree.
And I can see that because, films own the likeness of the person, obviously not the person, so they can use that in perpetuity. But it does seem it's uncomfortable, and one could argue unethical to use that person's likeness after they've died. And it's especially with Tarkin, not Peter Mayhew, that was Chewbacca, Peter Cushing. With him, it's less connected because he's been dead for many years, and a younger generation's not going to know him at all. With Carrie Fisher, she's been dead for a few years now, but she had recently died by that point, hence that's why she's in there as a CGI. That's a little difficult to take, and it definitely hits the uncanny valley. And She-Hulk does that too for me.
How so?
You know what the uncanny valley is?
No.
So I'm not going to explain it well. Einstein said if you can't explain it succinctly, you don't understand it well enough. So I'm going to fall into that.
Got it. Okay.
I'm also paraphrasing that. The uncanny it's the relationship of realism and your emotional connection to it, or your acceptance of that realism. So with an NES, when you watch Link go across the screen on the NES, it doesn't look real, but you accept it. And that as the graphical capability or as just the capability of illustration increases, you emotionally accept it with your level of comfort and understanding. And there's this drop of comfort that occurs when you reach some point of realism where it looks realer, but it's just slightly off, so it is emotionally uncomfortable. And then it tends to go back up. So the graph looks like a drop and then goes back up, the uncanny valley. So
it almost fits in too well, so you reject it. Because you're
but it's slightly off because humans are very good identifying humans, and you can always tell when it's just. With She-Hulk, there's just something. The skin doesn't look right. As good with Thanos, it didn't happen because I have no real understanding of what a being from Titan looks like.
I got the perfect example. I can accept Optimus Prime with all of my heart. I will never accept Jar Jar Binks.
That's very good. Yeah.
You understand what I mean? Like, that's just... It was enough fantasy there where I accept it as a fantasy avatar.
Yeah.
Whereas Jar Jar Binks is supposed to be a real character there.
Yeah.
I can't accept that. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's for multiple reasons. But so with Carrie Fisher more than Peter Cushing. But with Carrie Fisher, essentially, just for me at least, I was like, there's just there's something not quite right, and you register it on a subconscious level.
I didn't know there was an actual term for that. So thank you.
And
For
I've done a terrible job of explaining it, but that's essentially what it is. And
I understood it.
Yeah. So that, as far as, I think that's the only thing I didn't like, and even then, I didn't not like it all that much. It certainly wasn't enough to take anything away from the story for me.
There was a couple other things that I like and dislike, and I'll weave them together. So what I liked was how dark the entire planet was. The imagery, the clouds, the explosion when they're surfing, everything was just gritty and dark and felt real, especially when you juxtapose it against the CGI bright, shiny world of Naboo and all that other stuff.
Good point.
What I guess you say what I liked about something I dislike was I found it very real. That what was the builder of the Death Star? Gene Gerso?
Galen Erso.
The beginning scene just proves that women are horrible in emergency situations. She didn't do one thing right. She grabbed his arm, got in between a fight between two men. She left, came back. She missed a shot.
She shot Krennic in the shoulder.
Yeah, but that's missing. He didn't die. So my point being is I think it was pretty misogynistic for the director to give such an accurate depiction of women that it was too lifelike. So I'm not sure if I like that or dislike that in the film. We're not going to get any comment? You're going to leave me solo on that one? Did anything that I say was factually false?
I do not know enough about a woman's role in combat over the isolated periods in history where it has occurred legitimately to comment one way or another. I think that a woman in the Star Wars universe can probably fire with a blaster as well. She's an untrained woman, for Christ's sake.
I would have picked Reva. What I'm talking about, so
she's
maybe
an engineer's wife. How many engineers' wives do you know that can throw down?
So maybe you have not in this experience. I had to train my wife to not grab part of my body or pull me back when I'm in a conflict with another person, because it's a distraction. Your job is to be quiet and walk away and let me figure this thing out. There's nothing you can add. You can only detract and put me in a worse situation. You're a liability. Get away from me. Go to safety. That is commonplace for every man with a woman who's a little lippy. So I'm just saying. I'm just saying that I took that. I was like, yeah, man. She was just listening to him.
Do you know how many times in my relationship I have had to turn to my spouse and give him instruction on what to do when I am in conflict with another person?
But he will throw down with you.
A, that's not true. B, zero. Absolutely zero. Do you know why I've never had to have the conversation?
He won't scream and distract you.
True. I've never had to have the conversation because I don't usually encounter a situation in which I have to have an escalation of conflict.
Well, you're not me. And apparently
I know. You have beef with 50% of the people you train with.
Because they're assholes.
Everybody thinks I'm a nice guy.
Yeah, because they're assholes. Well, that is a whole different conversation.
That's true.
Yeah, I have a chip on my shoulder, but yes, I also smell out stuff that you don't.
Also true. That is very true. But that's a good subject for future conversation.
Yeah, so I should control it better and not train with those people, but I have a chip on my shoulder and I like fighting bigger people, so I'm a moron. But my point was I thought that was funny to see that stereotype was played out. One thing I like, but I didn't like. So the Chinese martial artist Ip Man, who played in this movie, I loved his role. I thought it was beautiful. He gave a sense of morality and the Force. Mm-hmm. I didn't like the Force walk that he did to push the master. While saying
one with the Force is with me. While
saying a prayer, because the minute he accomplished his task, the Force went, "Good, I'm done with you. You can get killed now." It was just, and I was like, okay, I'm assuming he's a Force familiar like Reva was.
He is not trained. I don't know whether he was Force sensitive or not. She was.
Oh, Force sensitive. Thank you.
She was not a Jedi. She was trained.
How could he have
trained in the use of the Force? That's an excellent question. How could he have like
done all
dodged
the things he
a
did.
firefight?
Yeah,
Because it's a good story.
or shoot planes down from his hearing. Like, I come on, not even Daredevil can do that. So I would assume he was force sensitive. It was just an inference that I made. I think they could have. I know they did it for a reason. I want to hear the reason. I did feel that emotional investment in the scene. It just seemed a bit too contrived for me.
I see what you're saying, and I can see that. I haven't done enough reading into Chirrut Imwe. I have his action figure, but
he's awesome.
He is.
He is amazing. He's underrated.
He is, and again, it just shows the good direction and the good acting and the good storytelling. He's not in a whole lot of scenes. He doesn't have to be, because you get everything you need to from the few lines of dialogue that he has. His protector has even fewer lines of dialogue, but you get everything that he does, and you still have that emotional connection when he's about to die and he looks back at his friend who has also perished, and he takes his friend's prayer up with him when he when he literally goes up in smoke. Great scene. Okay, go ahead.
It seemed like he wanted to die, though. He unnecessarily sacrificed himself.
After his friend's death, I don't think he had anything more to live for.
Killing more people.
And he did. But you don't need to know any more about that, do you? Because it was a good story arc. He was a noble protector who completed in a sense failed, but that was okay for him because his story arc was he became one with the Force. The Force was with him.
Oh,
not enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But, not enough to send a grenade somewhere else. The one thing I will say I didn't like was the scene with Forrest Whitaker, Saw Gerrera, or just Saw Gerrera's Forrest Whitaker inclusion. Forrest Whitaker is an amazing actor. He's
absolutely
Oscar or Emmy Award Oscar winning actor, incredible. A bit wasted in the Saw Gerrera part. He did a great job.
I agree.
But it was a weird thing, like Portcollett. Portcollett will know. Well, why not just have another reason for them to meet the pilot other than through this weird tentacle telepathic thing on Jeddah? I didn't quite understand it. There wasn't, for all the good characterization that the movie has, Saw Gerrera was not well characterized. And if you didn't know who he was already, there's no connection with him. He's this weird guy.
Okay, so let me stop you there. I don't know the background. And
he was in Rebels. Well, he was either in Rebels or the Clone Wars, and he's a freedom fighter in that, who then fights against the Empire.
Here's the way I saw it. The Rebels were in the recruiting phase. The alliance was not affirmed yet. Is that true?
Loosely.
It was loosely. Okay. He, from what I took from the movie, Saw Gerrera was basically a breakaway captain, leader of the potential alliance. And now he was doing actions that the main rebel conglomerate disagreed with, and they felt that that was hurting their cause to garner more support and more people. So I saw it as this two-way faction of Saw Gerrera needing to be, yes, maybe introduced in not such a necessary or pivotal way, but I did see that him being removed from the story allowed the rebel conglomerate to become more of an alliance because they had that counterpoint removed.
That's a good analysis. Saw Gerrera is like Che Guevara.
Okay.
Where he is a vicious, very violent freedom fighter. He hates the Empire, but he takes extreme measures to do so. He has no compunction against killing. Not like the rebels really stopped themselves either. Sure, exactly. Like with the Imperial pilot. And
he was less human because he was less human.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a great point. Physical representation. Star Wars is usually pretty good about that. But he wasn't in there enough to. He was like a misstep for me in the movie. All right, we only have a few minutes left.
I could see
How about this? It's a bit of a loaded question. So what do you think, if anything, is important about this film, either for Star Wars or just in and of itself?
I'll go back to my original point. It gave me hope as the OG Star Wars nerd. It basically, I felt disconnected from the prequels. I got to see Rogue One, which made me interested in the Star Wars universe again. So that's why it was important to me. I reluctantly watched Rogue One. My brother literally had to tell me 5 to 10 times, and I think he would sit me down to watch it. And I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as, as much as episode 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's why it was important to me. In my opinion, in my eyes, it kept the Star Wars franchise alive. Otherwise, I wouldn't care about 7, 8, or 9.
What's interesting is people got away from, Disney got away from the one-off serials because of the performance of Rogue One and Solo. Solo was just a more poorly executed film than Rogue One. But Disney took it as, people aren't interested in these non-saga things. And I think people are interested in saga things so long as they're well done.
Yeah.
Star Wars 7, 8, and 9 made a ton of money, but 8 and 9 are bad movies, are bad storytelling that are not really similar to Star Wars. It exists in the same universe, but only wears the clothes. It doesn't actually have the body or the soul.
Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, in my opinion, standalones.
Agreed.
Vastly more popular than 7, 8, or 9. Sure didn't make as much money for the company.
I don't know about that because they exist. I mean,
the merch.
The merchant. I'm a good.
Yeah,
I have
the merch
a lot of
they
merch.
might. Yeah, sure. Yeah, maybe. So whatever ticket sales they don't make, maybe from the merch they make it up. I think they're
Legos,
from what I've seen, they're wildly more popular than the last
They are,
movies.
And just like Rogue One, they build that universe out in the first season of Mandalorian. There's barely a Jedi.
Yeah.
And
I'm back in.
It's about the Mandalorians. In whatever the third season is, I have no idea what it's going to be. In the second season, there's more Jedi. But even then, it's not about the Jedi. It's about the Mandalorian and his world. Kenobi, obviously, it's about a Jedi. But it's done in a way to where you learn more about the world, and it's intriguing. Is it better if you know who Darth Vader is? Yeah. But it's not as required. It demands it. It doesn't require it. With Andor, and I won't say much about it. I just finished the 3rd episode tonight.
Oh, wow. I got to start watching.
So I will say it's very slow. And at first, really slow. There is exactly one plot point that happens in the first 2 episodes. And it happens in the first 5 minutes of the first episode. And the rest is all mood. But what it does, unlike any other Star Wars, for me at least, these first 3 episodes, it establishes kind of what a shit existence life is, not even under the Empire, but under the Renecops of the Empire. And how...
That is very interesting.
It's dark, it's dirty, it's kind of boring day-to-day plotting. Everything is the same, and he is not a good person in a bad job. He's a bad person. He's not even trying to do something good. It's just... It feels stale, and that is not something you see Star Wars do. I was waiting for the hook, because there's always like a hook with the first episode. We're like, oh, now I want to watch it. That doesn't happen. Something happens in the first 5 minutes, and then at the end of the episode, it just credits. But nothing happened. And nothing happens in the second one either. But it establishes the world.
I wonder if they're setting the tone so that you feel the misery and the slow hours.
That's the word. That's exactly what it is. It's misery and it's slow hours. It's a world that you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
Which is definitely a zig or a zag, whichever one, from the typical Star Wars, which is it ignites a lightsaber in the first 35 seconds. And, laser swords, wizard jumps. Great. With this one, that's not the case. The 3rd episode is a little bit more adrenaline pumping, but even then, it's pretty gritty the way they do it. And
interesting.
It's very human.
I'm actually going to cut you off because you are now burning some of our material we might talk about in our next episode.
That's a good point, but I think I did a good job at not spoiling anything. I'm not blowing anything by saying the first 5 minutes is... You're fine.
You're fine. Well, I think we are going to wrap this one up. Thank you for joining us. If you are willing to listen, we are willing to talk. See you next time. Bye.
That's it. That's our show. Join FighterWizard and myself for our next full-length episode where we will discuss whether or not we believe graduate school was worth the cost. Even if you don't care about graduate school, this will be worth listening to. Please do us a favor. Like, subscribe, share this podcast so we can get some traction. Once I get around to it, check us out on our socials. Combative Nerds on Patreon, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You know the deal. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you next episode.